People who make their living out of cleaning murder scenes, accidents, and the like. What is the worst thing you have experienced in your career? I spent some time with the coroner to shadow for school. They were showing me different cases and going over them. Pictures included. The one that seemed to emotionally bother this particular guy the most was a scene where a father was coming home and pulling into the driveway. His daughter, 3 years old, was running to greet him, and he didn't see her and ended up running over her head. The pictures were heartbreaking enough. I can't imagine what the dad went through when he saw her like. There was another one that had 3 bodies. Some guy killed his wife, his affair partner, and her daughter, put them in a shed in the middle of summer and left town. They were found 3 weeks later, basically piles of putrid slime. Maggots like fill 10-gallon buckets full, and bloated body parts, sloughing off as they tried to bag them. The murderer had a pilot's license and has never been caught. The decomp room smelled for months after that. I had a great-uncle who helped clean up the bodies left behind by hurricane Audrey in 1957. He said that the smell persisted in his nose for weeks after. It got so bad that he went to the doctor to see if they could do anything, and they clipped. It was explained to him that the smell had soaked into the hair, but I don't claim to know the validity of that statement. The hurricane hit South Louisiana in June of that year, and most of the bodies recovered were found in the saltwater marshes that cover the area. So it is safe to assume that they were in an advanced state of decay. I've heard it said that the smell of the decomposing bodies was so bad that the alligators would actively avoid the areas, but I don't know the validity of that either. Not me personally, but my dad used to be an firefighter. In the late 80s, he got a call about a horrid smell coming from the neighbour's house of the person calling. In knowing what it was, firefighter and police were dispatched. They found the house was owned by a single old lady who died in her living room chair. Not too bad, right? Wrong, the chair was an old leather recliner, and as she was decomposing, she melted and fused with the leather chair. When the EMS got there, they had to remove her from the house, and when they tried to pull her off, her back skin, arms and lower body separated from the rest of her body and remained attached to the chair. Decomposing flesh, blood and organs fell out and all over the char and floor. People were vomiting every 10 seconds and couldn't stand to be inside longer than a few minutes. My dad describes the smell and scene as the worst thing he has ever seen. Her body was so decomposed, she was basically liquid inside, with a fragile shell. He had to leave and grab a full respirator from the fire truck, and even then it didn't do jack shit. The others took turns going in to retrieve the pieces, so they can be disposed of. When they were finished, they burned the chair in the front yard. Working for a tow truck driver that get the calls after crashing. The worst one for me was a family of 6 coming back with over 10 pizzas for a baseball team. It was a head-on with a tractor-trailer 18-wheeler. The ambulance took the bodies away, of course. Everyone died. There was so much blood and vomit. Diapers, toy dolls, covered in blood. The pizza was everywhere inside of the car, like too thick on everything, and all over the road. There were so many backpacks and things just covered in pizza blood. It's hard to even describe it to this day. It was oozing out all over the road and was like an exploded pizza pocket. Everyone that was waiting in the traffic jam looked horrified. I'm not a crime scene cleaner, but we used to transport coroner cases as part of our job. The elderly man who blew his head off with a shotgun in a 3rd-story attic in the summer was rough. He'd been there a few weeks. We could smell him when we got out of the truck at the street. Blood spatter-covered every inch of the walls in that room, as did the fly. Had to scrape some dried brain off the floor into a container for the coroner. When I went to roll him into a body bag, his bloated, slimy greenish-blue skin slipped off of him, and I was left holding a large sheet of it with both hands. The worst part was his wife had passed a few weeks before. They had been one of those married for 60 years, inseparable couple. He just couldn't take it. That broke my heart. Other guys were puking. I cried silently. One of my first jobs after moving, I did this, and the job that had me walking wasn't even a scene as described. We did all types of hazard cleans, and the worst was actually a couple went on vacation and came back to backed up septic. Think about one thick, hard, dried out, crusty septic waste spread throughout the entire first floor of a house. Not going further into detail here was nuts. A family friend was a first responder to a scene where a young woman committed suicide by running onto a busy highway at night. A semi-truck hit her and essentially her body exploded. He described the scene of just picking up pieces scattered across the road and the shoulder. Edit. This got more attention than expected. The poor driver of the truck thought he'd hit a deer and didn't know it was a person until he saw the tattered clothing on the road. This happened probably 12 years ago. The story stuck with me because of how cavalier he spoke about. Sadly, this wasn't the worst fall he'd ever had, and there were a few he refused to speak about. I posted this on another thread, so just copy and pasted it, but this was one that I had to do clean up after a murder. It was a rehab house for ex-cons, 4-bedroom house with communal bathroom and kitchen. Sunday morning, a guy is in his room listening to music pretty loud. Gabe is in the kitchen cooking his breakfast, knocks on his door and tells him to turn it down. There's a small argument and returns to his breakfast, and turns his music up, so grabs the biggest knife in the kitchen, kicks in his door and stabs him through his left shoulder, entering by his collarbone. Runs out of his room, across the landing, down the stairs, out the front door, back inside. Back up the stairs and collapses on the landing. When I got there, it was like a scene from a movie. Walls and ceilings, everywhere were caked with blood. Apparently, after stabbed him, he returned to cooking his breakfast. There was a half-eaten breakfast in the kitchen when I got there. Not in cleanup, but I have a friend who is a paramedic, and he said the only call that ever really got to him was a call for a large, overweight woman who had fecal impaction, who they found laying on the floor naked and puking up shit. I work in the I was told by someone that works for a funeral home that they had to go get a girl that had overdosed and passed away. They said she had her breasts augmented and was pregnant. Turns out she overdosed while taking a bath and had decomposed enough that her breast implants and the fetus were floating around in the water. Then I clocked out and had lunch.